Amazing. We are live. Hi, Gobi. Gobi is my good friend, and I'm an investor of this company. Just for disclosure. Okay, so let me read a professional bio of yours. Gobi is a co-founder of LD Talent, exemplifies the modern tech landscapes focus on rapid learning and adaptability, completing his Stanford CS degree in 2 years, becoming a digital nomad, and then pursuing a master in HCI and AI. Gobi now leads LD Talent while working towards a PhD at Northwestern. LD Talent is a network of diverse vetted developers at ldtalentwork.com. Encourages continuous learning and productivity, reflecting key trends in the tech industry concerning the future of work, uh, di- diversity, and the importance of lifelong learning. Okay, so I'm sorry. I feel like the bio is underkill, and so you guys have clients from YC, Baidu Ventures, Infosys, and StarX. And full disclosure, I'm an investor. Welcome to Venture with Grace, Kobe.
Hi, Grace. That was awesome. That was an awesome bio. Thank you. You touched on a lot of what we're doing, and thank you for that. Yeah, and I've been listening to your podcast for years now, so I appreciate you having me on here. I've learned a lot from the various episodes about VC entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much. Okay, to start with the show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more, and then like what are you doing with LD Talent? Where did you come from, and why are you working on it?
Sure, yeah. So I am building a platform to hire, manage, and upskill diverse tech talent. And I
Mhm.
work with two other co-founders, Girja and Anisha, so the three of us. And we have built out this platform. We have over 600 talent on the platform. We have worked with around 100 customers so far. The talent are all over the world, but in particular in Africa and South Asia. And a lot of the companies are fast growing companies, as you alluded to earlier, in the US.
Mhm.
And well, what is the reason why I'm doing this? That's interesting. I grew up in the Bay Area. I was born in Wisconsin, live in Wisconsin now, and but I've traveled a lot. So I've traveled 45 countries, trying to go to a lot of them, and especially I like to go to countries that have a GDP per capita less than 10K, so that they're considered still developing. And one of the things I learned over the course of, for instance, going to Stanford, seeing the demand for really skilled talent there, and then graduating early, being a digital nomad and traveling the world through places like Morocco and Nepal and such, is just how much great talent there is out there, and how little emphasis there is on this overlooked talent. And so I know that over 70% of the world has access to the internet in some form or other right now. You can learn almost anything online through online coursework and different MOOCs, online open courses. So why don't we see it being more fluid? Why do you still see the emphasis on location, and COVID changed things a lot, but still there is a lot of untapped talent. And one of the things that I noticed is that Africa and South Asia, they're pushing out like hundreds of thousands of engineering grads every year, but these grads are like raw talent, like bright talent, but they're
Mhm.
not quite like equipped with the specific skills needed by industry. And so we're looking at a very interesting like kind of arbitrage situation where if you like incentivize somebody in Africa and South Asia to learn some skills, like for instance, if they know Python and you
Mhm.
incentivize them to learn, say, they know Python and linear algebra, and say you incentivize them to learn machine learning and PyTorch or something like that,
Mhm.
you could actually double their income. And so we're looking at problems like that, and seeing like, hey, how do we incentivize their lifelong learning? How do we upskill them to the point where they can be very useful? And how do we create a future of work ecosystem
Mhm.
where they could actually succeed? And so I think that a meritocracy really where we can highlight the work that they're doing. So I guess the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is really inspired by my travels, seeing bright people around the world.
Totally. Hi, Manu, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I have a couple questions. So when we're chatting during Christmas, I feel like as someone who have who have like hired talent from like Upwork or like other platforms, I feel like one of the biggest challenges like the communication would be a key issue. And okay, so like overall, what I thought your company were doing something really innovative and like impressive is because you really focus on the talent and there's so many platform they're really focusing on like getting the best clients, which totally makes sense, right? Like if you don't have clients you cannot pay for your developer, but on the other hand you are training the developers and then you are like discovering raw talent and then kind of like equip them with the skills that they need to succeed. One of the things that I found really challenging is like people are having really difficult to like just communicate with the developers and then it's really hard to vet them. I wonder like how do you solve that issues from your platform, and what are some earned insight in this industry that you kind of feel like we're not really noticing by people?
So the first thing is, so both of those are really valid points about communication and vetting, and there are certainly insights in this industry that you develop over the years. And thank you, Emmanuel, for sharing your experience. I think the one thing is around. Uh, there are a lot of great talent out there, especially in Africa and South Asia, who are extremely technically skilled. So they might be a Python expert. They might be able to do anything in Python. But if you are not technical
Mhm,
or if you don't have time, it can be difficult to communicate your needs to them.
mhm,
And I think that's where a lot of our newest like sort of developments on our platform are happening is we're a very chat-based ecosystem. So like when we use AI or LLMs or integrate with OpenAI APIs or do prompt engineering or anything like that,
mhm,
we want to be thinking about how do we actually reduce the barrier for clients to communicate, regardless of whether the clients are technical or not, help them communicate with the talent and help the talent communicate with the clients and so forth. So it becomes seamless. And so the first thing that we set up is not even a it's just a affordance. And
mhm,
I should kind of share it with you.
mhm,
But basically, it's over here. It's just our work session system. So the
mhm,
way we track time, it's entirely like sort of. And are you able to see these work sessions here?
mhm.
Uh, yeah. So it's a kind of a system where you can where developers describe what they're working on, include Git commit links or kind of Figma updates if they're a designer, and the sessions are in our Slack. They're describing transparently what they're working on, what they've achieved, and then those sessions are approvable by clients. This has sort of been the secret sauce, is boiling down like all that sort of like what they're doing into simple chat-based messages, and then the chatbots can come in and prompt them like, hey, I would recommend adding this proof of work attribute to this work session to be able to like increase the trust of the client, and then also what it eliminates the need to say how's it going basically with your talent, because you can see what they're working on in real time. This has been kind of the secret sauce that led to our kind of 85% free trial conversion rate. We give out $100 in free credit, and we're seeing like 85% of the time people continue on after that because of this work session system. It also keeping things in a very chat based format. It makes it easy for us to, like, for instance, correct people's grammar in real time, train them on grammar so that we can focus on the actual important thing, which is the technology that's being developed. And so that's where a lot of the applications of kind of NLP AI come in, is in this framework of mind. So yeah.
So is this like real-time translation between the engineer and the company?
It's, I mean, all of our talent speak decent English, so it's not like translation, but it's more like basically trying to make sure that they're expressing all the details that the
Mhm,
client needs to know,
mhm,
and making it transparent so the client doesn't need to worry about how's it going,
mhm,
basically. So I'll give you a couple examples to make that a little bit more transparent. So one example is if talent are basically describing, some piece of work, and they don't include a proof of work link. Like they don't include like the link to the code that they've developed. Then our system will actually prompt them, hey, you should include the
Mhm.
code, right? And that's like something that like that's something that managers waste their time on, and that's something that it prompt them. If they send a message that's so informal that it's not possible to read, then a kind of LLM based bot will come in and try to fix their grammar for them so that both sides can understand each other.
Mhm.
Another example is just when talent are kind of going over their estimate. So if they provide an estimate and then they go over their estimate, then the system will come in and try to like manage, budget control the process. So almost all the aspects that are done manually by project managers, we're trying to automate those aspects in our ecosystem, whether it's through AI or just simple heuristics. But that is one of the ways that we're trying to create a meritocracy so that talent can be successful and so that clients can actually make use of the fact that or leverage the fact that there are great talent out there in the world, and it doesn't really matter where they are. It doesn't really matter what their style of communication doesn't really matter because the platform will take care of that. The only thing that matters is their core technical abilities. And then so that's how we're trying to we do soft skill vetting as well, but we're also trying to have the platform do some heavy lifting as well.
Totally. Okay, so people were saying like prompt engineering would be like a new trend, and then like a lot of the original coding work are going to be replaced by AI. Like, what's your thought on that? And how will LD prepare the talents on the platform to, equip them with the newest technology?
Yeah, so I think that my tenet is that humans should only do what AI cannot do.
Mm.
Right? So humans are responsible for doing things like prompt engineering, right?
Mhm.
Specifying to the model what you want. And a lot of our engineers right now are working on projects around prompt engineering, whether it's prompt engineering for basically generating custom marketing emails,
Mhm.
or prompt engineering for when talent propose their lifelong learning projects. We do some prompt engineering to be able to uh, have AI models give them feedback on their projects and steer them towards a project that's unique enough so that they're learning something, but so that it's also within their zone of proximal development, so that it's achievable, and also something that's scoped so that our financial incentives program can actually like afford to kind of pay them for it and get value out of that when their profile improves. So I think that those are two areas where prompt engineering has been valuable to us, and I
Mhm.
think that there will be plenty of work for humans as long as they recognize that they should only be doing the things that the AI models cannot already do. And we're certainly doing that with a lot of automation as well, in terms of our logistical processes. For example, processing applicants who come into our network, automating aspects of interviews and things like that. The fact is that engineers, by definition, are people who solve problems, and designers as well. And so as long as there are problems in the world, there will be demand for engineers and designers. So I don't see
Mm.
that. I just see the AI as making it as something that's gonna make it easier to solve some of these problems so
Mhm.
that engineers can solve more problems. So yeah.
I love that. So I wonder when you mentioned like like when not when you but like I guess like when you're looking at the outsourcing ecosystem, we have TopTal, we have Upwork. Can you explain to us like their profit margin, like how does the money flow in the industry and how is LD different from them?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's two sort of paradigms out there, and I
Mhm.
can show you one of those comparison screens. But one paradigm is like Upwork, where you don't do vetting,
Mhm.
but you take a reasonable cut. And the other
Mhm.
one is like the other platforms out there you mentioned, Touring example, and some of the others, and they basically do vetting, but they take half the talent salary.
Mhm.
And so, is there any platform out there that's doing both? Is something like good quality vetting and taking a reasonable cut? Well, we're trying to be that platform. And I mean, you can see our pricing on our platform. It's through the work session, so you see the value that you're getting as the sessions are being tracked. Our rates are like $24 to $30 an hour on average for the talent around the world. We have talent, basically 15 plus per hour for talent, but generally on average, I think the average rate's around 24 an hour. And basically, you get good value because the sessions are showing the quality of work. They're creating this meritocracy. We even publish our profit margins. Our entire data is on our WeFunder profile. You can see what our revenues are, what our gross sales are, what our profit margins are. We're pretty transparent organization on that front. And like, yeah, if you look at some of the other platforms out there, a lot of them, they'll take half the talent salary. And if they do any vetting, or they just don't do quality vetting. And the other thing out there is that at some point relationships develop, right? Like we recognize that, like you're doing a startup, you work with the developer for over 7, 8 months, 10 months, and then you realize, hey, if I want to like hire this person directly for full time, is it reasonable? And our platform breakout fee is fairly reasonable compared to some of the competitors. So yeah, I would definitely say that this is something that's worth considering, and that there are a lot of competitors out there in this talent space, but almost none of them are looking at problems the way that we are in terms of value and in terms of the absolute surplus of raw intelligence in the world, and honing that intelligence into something that can be useful in terms of industry. That is something that we're looking at.
Totally. And then you guys have a 85 to 90% of like free trial conversion.
Yeah.
So basically most people just like stay onto the platform. I just want to give that a shout out. Hi Anthony. So basically I'm curious, like, when you're looking at, so like one of the other piece that I find really interesting is like you guys are offering education for developers, right? And then one of the problem you're solving is diversities in tech. And can you share with us like what's your outlook for the future of the talent distribution across the globe, and how will LD like help educate the market, as well as like being profitable?
Yeah, so I think that right now we figured out we've learned a lot about design, we've learned a lot about marketing, but one of the things that we still have like some very important projects on are very, very like advanced forms of vetting and training.
Mhm.
That's actually like our core product, and that's something we're basically heads down on right now, kind of thinking about that. And so, in particular, out of my PhD research came these insights around what makes a professional developer. And I'd like to share that with you, because whether it's training or whether it's vetting, there's almost a blurred line between the two. Because if somebody is not good enough, they can just
Mhm.
go down into the next bracket of learners and then upskill themselves. I think what we recognize, and we describe this a lot on our profile here on WeFunder, is what specifically, like if you look at the world, half the world controls 5% of the world's wealth. So you have a really huge opportunity here. If you think about the fact that half the world also, probably like around 60% of them have access to the internet in some form. So I feel like a lot of VCs are just totally ignoring this histogram, like, or maybe they just think it's too hard of a problem to solve, because I'm surprised that almost no companies out there are directly addressing this particular issue. But specifically, the problem that we found, the reason why people don't want to just like hire a developer on Upwork, or even if they do, they get disappointed later, or the reason why they might spend over budget on Turing or whatnot, or some of these other platforms, are just because, or hire developers who are like totally overpriced. The reason why is because while there is a lot of like surplus of great talent coming out of Africa and South Asia who are fresh university grads, really young people, right? Young people, fresh university grads. If you look at the Stack Overflow developer report out there, you'll see that there's just so much influx of young, semi-skilled technical talent, with so much promise, raw intelligence. The problem is that I looked at in my PhD research was what actually makes a developer a professional. And there is a way to sort of like extrapolate this to designers as well, but let's just look at developers first. So let's see. It is their ability to do agile style of development, but it's also their ability to respond quickly in a remote work setting and their ability to estimate time. It's their ability to do teamwork, submit good Git pull requests in a social coding format, but it's also just their core algorithms logic, the kind of like classic Google or FangM interview problem. It's their ability to do logical thinking, but it's also something like their intellectual merit. Like, are they aware of like what's going on in the world? Do they read? It's like all these little factors. Yes, it's their English communication, but a lot of work can be done by LLMs as well and training people on the English side of things. But it's also their ability to document. We talked about responsiveness a little bit, but it's also their ability to like, is this person a person who's not just going to start a project but complete it? Are they going to take on 10 projects and complete none of them, or take on 1 or 2 and complete both of them? It's like being able to measure those things really helps. So there is some aspect of soft skills as well, in terms of like, there are ways to assess divergent thinking and creativity. And we're looking at all of these, and we're actually defining like clear like evaluations, like whether it's quizzes, whether it's interview scores, whether it's automated evaluations, to actually fill out this whole profile for all the developers. We're also running like automated code analysis. We forked Stanford's MOS project, which is based on its paper, and kind of are using that for plagiarism detection. And then since the paper is public domain, we just read the paper and implemented what it said. But then what we did was we customized that for our particular use cases, extracting out the unique code. You see so many developers out there who just do like Netflix clone, or build out these like clone applications that are copies, and they're not really using their creativity. So this automated analyzer pulls out just the code that they've written uniquely, that's not copied from existing libraries, and then tries to analyze it. What design patterns have they used? What kind of testing have they done? What kind of machine learning or other third-party libraries have they used? What kind of complexity in the code do we see, and such? And we're trying to analyze their code, trying to get a really detailed picture around basically like, what is the level of this developer from both soft and technical skills front. We talked about the algorithms, but it's also like, what kind of special technology areas are they looking at? And what kind of like sort of like, how readable is their code? And even if they're not there yet, what kind of lifelong learning projects are they doing? Can we background check them? It's this whole picture coming together that isn't really there. And I believe that actually, if we can vet the talent to this level, which we are developing right now, and we've done maybe half of it so far, if we can get them to this level, then it's basically a diagnostic. Because if they're there, then we'll mark them as verified on our platform. If they're not at the level that we require yet, then all we need to do is to figure out the amount of money that we want to incentivize them with, and use that money to fund them to do the lifelong learning projects required to get them to the level that they need to be, such that they're in demand in industry. And so that's what I would say is what we're doing on both the vetting communication on both the vetting and communication fronts, but also kind of on the training front as well.
I guess, like, how do you measure someone's, like, soft skill? Because I feel like technical skill is easier, as, like, they could just code and then you check the code's quality. But how do you measure, like, on your sheet, there's, like, entrepreneurial skills and, like, these other, like, soft skills?
I absolutely think that they are possible to measure. I think that so what MOOCs do, our online open courseware, they actually will have like graders. So you can, like, mixed methods are well known in research, like mixing qualitative and quantitative sort of metrics, but I think, and methods. But what I think is possible, for example, is to take someone, have them answer an open-ended question about something that measures entrepreneurial like sort of proclivity. Like, for instance, what if you asked somebody, what's an idea that you have? And then you have the LLM basically respond saying, okay, cool, thanks for your idea. And then ask them, what's the need for the idea? And then kind of engage in a debate with an AI bot that basically like looks at the need for the idea. Like, say I want to build plastic cups, and I think there's a need for plastic cups. Then the LLM might respond saying, hey, but there are a lot of companies out there that already build plastic cups. And then it's on the person who's being evaluated to basically respond saying, yeah, there are companies X, Y, and Z, but I think there's this particular niche market. And then what you could do is you could have the LLM sort of give a score on their idea. And then you could also have third-party graders, like other members of the network, peer review. This is something that comes out in a lot of Chris Peach's work about like scaling MOOC answer grading. He's a professor at Stanford, and I know a few others have also worked on like scalable peer review. Basically, have other members of the network also assess their entrepreneurial like sort of ability and creativity in that front, and then you can actually convert that sort of like soft skill to a number. Now, is that number going to be perfect? No. Is there going to be subjectivity involved? Yes. But as long as you have enough reviewers and enough of a process towards this, I believe that you would have more signal than just noise. And so that's one way to kind of go about it.
Totally. I wonder, like, what's your go-to-market strategy? Because I think, Upwork or TopTal or like any other competitors, they're focusing on the clients for a reason, because essentially, eventually, like, you need to make money to incentivize the developers. I feel like as a client or as someone who may be hiring an engineer, one of the question I would have is like, how fast can we onboard this guy or girl, like, to start doing work, right? Like, so if they gonna take like 3 months of them to like pick up the speed training things, like, I cannot get stuff done right now. um what's your idea on that? Or like, do you have to pick a very specific set of clients that are not time sensitive for that matter?
Oh, so the talent that we present in front of the clients will be ready to get going on day one, and they are ready on day one. So we don't present learners, right? We present professionals who are ready to do work. It's just, how do we build that supply side? Like from an investor perspective, yeah, how do we build the supply side matters. But from a client perspective, it doesn't matter. All we're going to do is give you great talent at a great price. And that is something that we are going to be able to do better than any other platform out there because of our supply side advantage. Now, so why would somebody, like you asked about the go-to-market strategy, right? It is my belief that if you have good quality at a good price, you don't really need to worry about that go-to-market too much, because in my experience, increasingly it's been that people come onto the platform and they realize that you can get good quality development at $24 an hour, and they don't leave. And people out there, they say that they don't care about price, but people are price sensitive. And in the end of the day, and people say that other people, they go onto Upwork and think that they can get good quality, but people are quality sensitive too. So if we have both, we'll surely be able to attack this market, is something that I think. And kind of like, yeah, we have all this like sort of go-to-market strategy. We get clients through SEO. We rank for like on SEO type of search results. We have different ways of getting customers through various different channels, and this is kind of detailed on our WeFunder, like different organizations being listed by YC as a resource, and Techstars and 500 Global companies have used us and things like that. But I think one of the biggest things is just, in the end of the day, having good quality talent at a good price will automatically grow. And that's something that I've increasingly discovered over time. Yeah.
How do you get the best supply? So, we're talking about like, I know that you visited Africa and Nepal, and, you know, when you were visiting them, like, obviously, like, the developers are super enthusiastic, but at the beginning, how do you guys, like, actually found them and they found you?
Yeah, so I mean, here's our Kenya meetup. We had over 40 people there. We're in Kenya, Uganda, Nepal,
Mhm.
India, all over North and South India, Ethiopia, Egypt, Tanzania, huge, and then all over the US as well with clients and investors. But when we had these meetups, what I discovered, that the talent, are a lot of talent out there, a lot of raw intelligence out there, but the problem is the skill, right? They're not skilled in the specific technologies. that are required. So it, like as they go through the process, right? Like there's a lot of like hard work going through that funnel, and some people do drop off, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, even if we get 10% of the people who are vaguely interested in software engineering and have the raw intelligence to do so, or same with designers, even if we get 10% of them, we've made a dent in the world. And so I think that that's the answer is just yeah. But sorry, did I answer your question, or could you rephrase like specifically what you're looking for?
I feel like one of the things that are just like, how do you get the supply and skill, right? Like, how do you kind of like onboard it a lot of people that are, and then training them in a budget? So, we're talking like you're incentivizing people using money to help train them. And then let's say if a regular training program costs like, 3 months, and then you have to kind of like pay the people to um be incentivized to learn, right? These like are technical skills that are going to take some time and work. How do you have the budget to train, 40 developers at the same time?
Yeah, so the world is a really unfair place, and the fact is that the cost, the rate of talent in many of these regions are such that we as an organization can afford to pay for lifelong learning projects in Africa and South Asia, because we know that if somebody does like 3 lifelong learning projects, they'll get a client, and that'll make, and each of the lifelong learning projects, they're a reasonable investment for us. So that's I mean, your questions were around supply and scale. There is almost like an infinite supply of fresh engineering graduates in South Asia and Africa, almost infinite. I mean, there's just so many people who are interested in doing software engineering. So that's not an issue. Now, scale and budget to actually train individuals, that is a more interesting question. So part of the like sort of things that we're doing is like, yeah, we do give out $40 incentives for people to do lifelong learning projects and publish them on our blog and our YouTube, and that helps them learn. We're also launching vetting challenges, which are similarly priced, and people get incentives for completing those challenges. Those investments that seem small, like less than $100 in training somebody, can actually make the difference between them getting a client or not, and that client might bring in thousands and thousands of dollars in revenue to the company and in earnings to that talent. Because actually in software engineering, it's a few fundamental concepts that you need to learn to be able to deliver value. It's just that those concepts are difficult to learn, but you have the willingness in South Asia and Africa. And so that's why the incentives kind of work within a budget. And then the other thing is like, how do you scale it? Well, the AI is helping us scale it a lot. Like right now, we're not able to keep up with the number of people who want to do lifelong learning projects on our platform, because a lot of people want to get upskilled to the level where they're in demand by clients. But one of the things we're doing is we're using prompt engineering, as we alluded to earlier, and other sort of automated methods to basically streamline these logistics of doing a lifelong learning project, of doing a vetting challenge, using peer review based methods to evaluate the quality of the vetting challenges that people complete to see, are they actually skilled in this skill now. So I think those are the answers to the budget, supply, and scale questions that you've posed. Yeah.
I wonder, you mentioned like $40 each person for the life learning project, right? How
Yeah.
long is a life learning project? And then how many people from when you pay them $40 to learn or like to, can actually complete? I assume you mean like, when you're doing like when let's say if I'm an engineer, I come onto your platform and then
Mhm.
I like spend 10 hours on a lifelong learning project. And then after I pass a certain test, you pay me $40. Is that how it's
Mhm.
structured?
Yeah, so you need to create the artifact. So there are guidelines on our website. If you go to the bottom of our
Mhm.
website, it's called GitHub plus blog projects. There are guidelines on what you need to do to complete a lifelong learning project. But if you actually look on our blog, you can see examples of actual lifelong learning projects and what people have done these lifelong learning projects in. And we've seen so many examples of people whose profiles they contain a lifelong learning project, and then after they do a lifelong learning project, they are like, you know, in demand enough to get a client. And so we saw that with several cases here. And so yeah,
Like
yeah, I mean, yeah.
if there's like a, you know, let's say if we do, let's say like if 100 developer come onto um LD Talent and then they go through the training program, how many would actually turn out to
Mm,
start working after, let's say, 30 months or whatever period of time that uh you think
y-
will get will
y-
make them get done the course?
Yeah, so we have the exact numbers in our WeFunder, but I think around a third of the network has done some sort of lifelong learning project.
Mhm,
Around a third of the network has gotten some kind of a client and like work from clients. Um,
mhm.
so a third of the network has done some kind of lifelong learning project, but not gotten client work yet. A third of the network have gotten client work so far. And then a third of the network are waiting for the next opportunity. So I would say that's how it splits. And so I would say that but when people pursue lifelong learning projects, it's not necessarily the case that all of them complete it. I would say that
Mhm.
there is a drop off, and maybe around, I don't know, I can't put a number off the top of my head, but uh, some people do drop off. That is true. Yeah. And
Let's say when a StarX company come to you, what is a touch point that they're gonna get? Is that like a pool of developers from similar to like a Upwork interface, or are they have to talk to a business manager such as yourself or like your co-founders to you know, get directly vetted to, you know, a certain group of engineers?
Yeah, so it really depends. So like we just are experimenting with the consulting layer where like we have product management as well. I mean, I'm listed on the platform. My co-founder is as well. We're just trying to test that and try to see like, are clients interested in a PM type of labor to manage the talent? Because we've discovered a lot of things in terms of how do you manage talent around the world. In terms of what you're looking at, you're not looking at you're looking at an interface that works similar to Upwork at a high level design wise, but there are a few differences. So one difference is you get introduced to the talent, and you can of course like interview the talent. You can get a granular scoped estimate like you do in Upwork. The pricing cut is similar to Upwork, but I think that the work session system lets you get a lot of value early on. The free trial is also a testament to the quality. Like the biggest difference between us and Upwork is that we're vetting the talent. Like you can see the interview scores of the talent on their profiles. And so I think the reason why we're able to offer the first $100 of work for free is because we know the talent will do a good job. Like we know, whereas Upwork would never do that because they don't know that, like, you know, the talent would convert the
Mhm.
client. And so I think that's a big differentiator from Upwork. And then, yeah, if people want a more like project management type of service, there are talent at higher rates available. And one way, like generally, like we're creating this project success canvas, which one can help clients basically like know the right questions to ask to manage talent around the world. But another thing that it has is sort of like a like order of magnitudes, like how much does it cost to build a web app? How much does it cost to build a mobile app? Turns out that to build landing pages, you can do them in like the tens of hours or the hundreds of dollars. But to build websites, you might need hundreds of hours or thousands of dollars. To build mobile apps, you often need um, more than that. And if you hire US based like sort of project management help on our platform to help manage talent around the world, generally you're looking at like a 50% increase in budget. So it's not so much because for every hour worked by a project manager, you have like 5 or so hours worked by the talent around the world. And so it tends to work out well. So yeah.
What do you think is like the biggest challenge? Let's say if one day, unfortunately, LD fail, like what would you say would be that factor?
I don't think that LD will fail because there's so many backup plans that are possible, right? Like I think that there is always demand for engineering talent, and there's always a supply of like fresh raw intelligence in the world, especially in the majority world. But I do think that when you say fail, I think that certain experiments that we're doing certainly can fail. Like for instance, are there enough clients in the US, or are there enough companies in the US that are, one, able to realize that there's great talent out there, and two, qualified to manage that talent? If we're wrong about that, then the consulting angle where we have a PM layer might be something worth exploring, or building our own products might be worth exploring. The problem is that, okay, will we have enough money to be able to run all the experiments? That's another thing. I mean, we have done all right in fundraising, so I think we should be okay. But I think that the other thing that's a little bit interesting is uh, our cost of development is low enough and high quality enough that if our clients, if there are not enough clients who can appreciate that, then we can probably monetize the network in other ways. But I guess so that's my answer. But what was the like preposition? Because as soon as you said if LD fails, then I just heard the if LD fails, and I answered that. But what was the sort of second part of that?
I think the part is kind of like, if it cannot scale to a degree, like, I mean, I feel like you can always run it as a small business, right? Like, we have so many developer or like so many like developer companies that's out there to do who's doing kind of some sort of like outsourcing. I love what you guys are providing as a learning program. It's sort of like a LinkedIn Learning, but for like developers, right? So I feel like I really like the training aspect, but I guess like if it cannot scale, what would the reason be? And I have a second part of the question is like, let's say if today you got linked up to Google and then they decided to be like, hey, we're gonna hire 10% of a Google developer on your platform. How are you gonna be able to like handle that amount of like workload? And how do you quickly train these engineers to become like a qualified engineer at Google?
Okay. So on the failure case, I think that um, we would basically need to find other ways of monetizing the network. That's actually one of my biggest struggles right now, is that I see so much value. I'm like able to hire talent around the world, get good work done. I see so much value in the talent around the world, but I'm afraid that what if there other people, like for instance running companies, don't see that value, right? Like, and
Mhm.
and if they don't see that value, then I need to have another way of monetizing the network because we've built up a great network. So we had a few ideas. One is, of course, a sort of PM layer, which we talked about. Another is like kind of building products of our own. Because if people are not able to see our value, well, our cost of development, our cost of doing anything is so reasonable that we could build products of our own, and we already started that. So I'll share with you what we've built out. So basically, this is called Tia. It's a Pomodoro app. So it basically has you work for 25 minutes, like another Pomodoro timer, but it's mental health focused for remote workers. So during the breaks, it gives you motivational quotes, therapy worksheets,
Mhm.
psychiatrically relevant advice, other things like that. This was actually an idea that came out of a conversation between me and a developer in Nigeria, Jehoshaphat. And these are the kind of ideas that we do want to invest in, basically like ideas that can target the US market, but are created by people all over the world. And so that is something that is of interest to us. And, mental health is a really important space. Productivity is an important space. It's also aligned with our overall interests as a company. So we'd be interested in investing in building products like this. And we have the whole arsenal to be able to do this kind of thing very efficiently. So that's another way that we could kind of monetize. So that's the answer to the first question. The second question was around Google. If Google wants to hire 10% of their workforce through LD talent, how do we scale up? Well, I imagine it would be probably more staggered than that. But if that does happen, what we would really need to do is continue doing what we're doing right now, which is automating all of our flows. So our marketing, theoretically speaking, the way that we've set it up should be infinitely scalable. So we should be able to basically reach out in all of our different channels at greater scale, whether it's Slack orgs where we find talent, or different Discord groups where we find talent, whether it's through SEO or whatnot. There are many ways that we find talent, and I'm not worried about the supply side because there's a lot of talent looking for work right now. What I am worried about is a little bit about how quickly we can automate the workflows of training. And so LLMs are helping a lot there, like the OpenAI API, we use that a lot right now. We're doing a lot of automation in terms of like steering AI, using AI to steer the talent in their lifelong learning so that it is scalable. And I think that's kind of the thing right now, like helping people pick a unique project for doing lifelong learning, something that's offering unique learning value opposed to other things that are offered in the internet. If people get the wrong answer on a certain vetting test, right? Like AI kind of steering them towards the right answer, helping them learn and things like that. That's where we're investing a lot right now in terms of our time, money, and resources to be able to do, because that will help us be able to scale the supply side training. Yeah.
Totally. I wonder, we had a discussion during Christmas, not discussion, like we had coffee, but anyway,
Yeah.
so we were chatting about like the top players in the industry some of them are like privately held, and some of the really big player originally raised a lot of money, but they end up failing.
Mm.
Um, why?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Mhm.
Some of the players out there, they raise a ton of money and they fail, and some of the players who raised less money actually were more successful. That's a very interesting point about this talent space. I think that this is not a SaaS app, right? Like a SaaS app scales a different way than a talent marketplace scales, right? You're not going to help people learn the fundamentals of software engineering and become a software engineering expert in 1 year. It takes a little bit more time than that. But what we think is that basically clients, I think the most successful companies out there in this space have good relationships with their clientele. So whether it's different consulting companies or whatever your clientele is, startups, fast growing companies, I think they have good relationships with their clientele. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is just that you can't expect to just send a bunch of emails. I mean, we send emails too, but you can't expect to send a bunch of emails and just gather huge adoption. There's a lot of like effects, right? Network effects, like having a blog out there on our technical blog might start a relationship with a potential customer that later on they rediscover us, they warm up to us, and they become a customer. Like those are the kind of ways that we've gotten customers in the past. And so I think we just have to be in it for the long run. Like there's a VC in the Valley in San Jose who basically told me, like, in this business, if you just stick around, you will tend to be successful. It's not going to grow overnight like a viral app, but if you stick around and keep improving the network, you should be able to be successful. And so that is something that we're quite interested in, and we know it's not easily replicable, right? Like if we train a ton of talent and make sure they're really good, um, that stickiness is not going to go away overnight either. So I guess that's my answer to the question.
What are you gonna do with the money? Um, and like what's your like 10-year perspective on growing LD?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years. I mean, in the last 10 years, I was basically in school, undergrad, master's, PhD, and I learned so much for this business, basically. I think that in the next 10 years, we need to automate all our processes around marketing, vetting, and design. And I think we need to play our bets right. So no matter what, I believe that there is a way to monetize this network. A network of really smart talent who are either skilled or gaining skills is surely monetizable. I think that the way we monetize it, um, I'm not sure which way is going to be the best way, but we need to do all three ways, right? Like we need to build a great talent network to be able to have a PM layer actually work, because the underlying talent need to be good. We need to have a good project management layer for if building products in general, like digital products in general. So I think that I don't know what will happen in the next 10 years, but I think that as long as we do a good job at vetting the talent, and as long as we do a good job at the sort of automating the management aspect, we will find the right market, or um, you know, be successful in multiple markets. So, yeah.
Totally. I wonder in terms of like, if you're looking for investors and partners, um, okay, number one is like, how are you spending the money that you have raised? And number two is like, um, who can help you? Like, what kind of company or things that you wanted to partner to help? Oh, hi, Jira.
Hi. Here. How do you handle
Trust.
trust? Okay, so there's two questions. There's your question.
Mm,
There's also curious.
yeah.
Also.
So one of our audience has a question says, how do you handle trust?
Okay, so
I
do
think
you
that's
want me
bigger
to
than
answer that first before I talk about
sure.
the okay, sure. So I think that so there's a lot of elements to trust. I think one of the biggest elements is the way that work happens. It happens in a way that's transparent to the clients, but also the pricing model handles a lot of the trust, right? So we're trying to build relationships, and that's why like first we start off with we pay for the LD talent pays for the first $100 of work, because basically what we're trying to do is say like, hey, if talent estimate that like, hey, they estimate that like, hey, I'm going to take 5 hours for this particular task. Do they actually take that much time? And slowly a little bit of trust develops. And then those work sessions that they track, the 30-minute work sessions, they're describing clearly what they're working on. And that also is like a little bit of trust in there. Like little features add up and they all build trust. And then those work sessions are approvable by the client. So that's that approving process of approving these individual 30-minute work sessions. That is that's a bit of trust as well. And then the system works like an escrow, so that client funds hours, but then they can always withdraw the hours that they haven't used yet, withdraw the funds that they haven't used yet, and then the clients are basically expressing their approval on each work session over time. And then as they build more trust, they often bump these talent up like, hey, I don't need to approve at the 30-minute level. I can approve at the 1 hour or even 8 hour level. And so that's how we've seen trust build up, eventually to the point where people actually build up trust with talent around the world, to the point where they actually are ready to hire them directly, and then they pay a buyout fee and hire them directly. So that's one way we build trust, is through pricing and the work session system. The other thing about trust is the profiles. So one of the things that we're storing on the profiles is like data about the top talent. And so one of the things we do is, the talent want to make sure that they have a good reputation on our platform, because basically like a lot of the data that we track on our platform is around how quickly talent respond. Are they going to ghost you or not? If somebody ghosts you, then they're banned from our network. Like there's a lot of mechanisms in here. We're trying to track a lot of data so that basically we can understand like, who is this individual, how are they behaving, how reliable are they over time, and measuring that in terms of responsiveness, in terms of earned hours, in terms of work session approval. So those are other attributes. Of course, we have like legal mechanisms as well, in terms of, for instance, we do see talent signing NDAs and intellectual property agreements. Yeah, so intellectual property related trust, like we have seen different sort of setups. So when clients, regardless of whether clients handle like a PM who's based in the US to manage the talent, or whether they hire directly, um, um, hire talent directly on the platform, or whether they hire PMs on the platform who are based in the US, and then they have them manage the talent. Regardless of either way, all the talent are like available to sign intellectual property related agreements, NDAs, IP protection agreements, and such. But then the other thing is we try to help the clients like prevent even the need for that. So like, I mean, yeah, sure, you signed the agreement, but you shouldn't get to the stage where legal is even a problem, right? You should set up your code base and your database and other architecture in a way that basically prevents the need for excessive sharing, right? So if you've set up your local code base in a way such that people can work on your local code base without looking at production data, that's like one important step. Another thing is you don't need to share all of your code base. You can set it up into submodules. That's a lot of what like either you could do, or you could have your project manager do on the platform, to create permissions for access to any type of code or any type of data, so that the permissions are only like necessary, and then they're also revocable. So those are some of the ways that we do it. So some from a software standpoint, some from a legal standpoint, and then one is actually from a network standpoint. So
Okay.
if ever we have an event where talent don't respond, right, and there's a concern about talent responding, we've actually had meetups in all these different locations. So it's not like we're just a completely online entity. There is like a physical presence of meetups that have happened all over the world, in Kenya and Uganda and Nepal and stuff. And so if talent disappear, we actually message the group. So we message the group saying like, hey, we haven't heard from so and so today, and the group comes in like a community and say, hey, let me go get a hold of them and check on them and see how they're doing. So we've built these like sort of like trust based mechanisms in that sense too. So like if there's any violation, it's not like the talent are just going to go through and disappear, whether it's an intellectual property violation or whether it's any other type of violation. There's a whole community and a reputation, not just of the platform overall, but of each of the individual profiles on the platform based on who knows them on the network. So that's another way to create that sort of trust and accountability. And the meetups definitely do help with that as well, as the Slack org. But yeah, that is my answer to the question around trust. Yeah.
Jerry like basically clarify the question. He said, I was mainly concerned about intellectual property related trust.
Yeah, so on the intellectual property related trust, I think the best solution is on the software side. So only share what you need to share, or have your like US based project manager share it on everything, and then have them specifically allocate certain parts of the code base and to the talent, only local host. I think that's a good way. So the talent don't necessarily need to have access to the production data or the production servers. So that's one thing. If you're concerned about like code itself being copied and things like that, then sharing subsections of code or delegating specific parts of the project could be viable options as well. But I think like with anything, there is some level of trust, whether it's a person in the US or whether it's a person abroad. There is always an element of trust that needs to be built over time. And so I think it's not just like a one-fold like, you sign this legal agreement. There's legal agreements. There's also the work sessions. There's also the permissions software wise and data wise. There's also like deciding how much you want to share. There's also the decision of whether you want to have like a US based PM kind of handle things, and then allocate sub portions to talent so that the talent don't need to have access to everything. And then finally, there's like the accountability of the network itself. So there's a lot of elements in here that go into building trust. Yeah.
Okay, so finally we have the last question is, you know, you have raised some money and then like how are you planning on executing it better with the money?
Yeah. So we have a lot of important projects coming up. Like we have some details around like what are we actually going to use this money for? Why do we need the money? So I would say actually increasingly I'm feeling like vetting and training is the most important part, because some of the money will go into marketing, and we do talk about this, but I think that the quality of the product needs to be exceptionally high. And the quality of our service will only be high when the talent are really, really good. And the way that we make sure that many of our talent, I would say out of the 600 talent on our network, around 150 are really, really good already. And they're earning on the platform. A lot of them are earning and doing well. But I think that in order to make sure that more and more of the talent are able to be really, really good, we need to have those automated sort of automated scoring of their vetting challenges, automated scoring of their lifelong learning projects, automated like diagnostic, and then this is what you need to do to actually improve, and just see who actually goes through that process, because once they go through the process, you know that they'll be really good. So I think that on the vetting front, being able to automatically analyze code, that's where a lot of our money and attention is right now. And so that's where most of the money will go into. Maybe not most of the money will still go into marketing, but probably like 30-40% of the money will go into like improving the platform such that we can produce a really good quality service by making sure that the talent are really, really good. And that is automating a lot of our infrastructure. And then that'll almost like make the marketing as well, the marketing dollars, like so much more valuable and useful. Because when you send a profile that's really stellar, that has like screencasts of like PR diff videos describing PR diffs and talent like clearly articulating what features they built and why they made code changes, you automatically will see that, you know, those profiles are recognized as for their value by people who view them, who receive that marketing message. You'll automatically see that happen. So I think that, yeah, but platform improvements and marketing are the main areas. There will be some on the management front, but a lot of that is like automation of management as well. So it's almost like entirely, almost all of our budget is like, how do we write software to automate things that other organizations do manually? And how do we write software to automate vetting and training? And how do we write software to automate marketing? So basically, and the answer to your question is the investment will go into writing software, but the software will be used for vetting, training, marketing, and a lot of other areas.
Amazing. On that note, thank you, Gobi, for coming onto the show today. And where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I guess that's where I'm decently active. I can share my LinkedIn in the chat if that's there possible. Oh, I can't post here. But anyway, if you just search on LinkedIn Gobi Dasu, GobiDasu, and you'll find me. There are very few Gobis. So
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Gobi, for coming on to Adventure with Grace.
Thank you, Grace. You had some fantastic questions and covered almost everything we're working on. So appreciate that. You asked great questions.
You're the best. Okay, I'm going to end stream.